you to understand that he's in a tight position. And let me say this, if we want this to pass, we've got to help him. And I've sat down with him over and over again and said, look, man, what do you need in order to help us with this bill? And he's told me a few things, and so we're going to work with him very hard to make sure that that happens. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, over the past decades, the effort to restore the Chesapeake Bay has been largely based on voluntary agreements within and among the states. Recent assessments of the Bay developed by the Obama administration show us that the pledging of earnest promises, the utterance of heartfelt slogans, and the signing of agreements enforced only by goodwill have achieved water quality in the Bay that is still rated very poor, even though billions of dollars have been spent in support of these promises. But ladies and gentlemen, the tide is turning, and we all understand something that is so important, and that is we can do better. We can do better. Earlier this year, President Obama issued an executive order to guide a renewed and reinvigorated federal effort to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. I know that you will be discussing the details of this executive order throughout this conference, so I won't delve into them now, but let me say that this order embodies President Obama's commitment not only to restoring the Chesapeake Bay, but to finally making comprehensive environmental restoration a national priority. As a senior member of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, I'm also so pleased that our chairman, Jim Oberstar, and the chair of the Water Resources Subcommittee, Eddie Bernice Johnson of Texas, have made moving legislation addressing the environment restoration needs of major water bodies among the top priorities of our committee. I can only hope that these commitments will be met by equal fervor in the Senate. As you probably know, we've sent a lot of things over to the Senate, and there they die. So not only must you do your work here on the House side, but in the Senate side, and I'm so glad that my colleague from Maryland, Ben Cardin, is leading the effort on the Senate side. As I often say, this is our watch. This is our watch. This is our watch. This is ours. This is not about the people that came before us. This is our watch, and we have the best opportunity in more than a generation to clean up our nation's water. And if we do not take this opportunity, we may wait for another generation for such a chance to come again. And that's why when I said that we must be effective and efficient, I meant that. I meant that. And it's not enough for us to be efficient and effective. We've got to get other people to join us. You all already have the fire. You all already understand it. You all are already synchronizing your conscience, your conduct with your conscience and your conduct and your commitment. You're synchronizing them all together. But we've got to go out and get other people. We've got to make sure that our farm community fully understand what this is about. If we don't clean up the Chesapeake Bay, we won't have to worry about farming because we will have all kinds of problems, major problems. This is bigger than a farm. This is actually bigger than us. This is about not only what happens while we're on this earth, but this is about generations yet unborn. And so the assessments of the Bay's water quality developed by the Obama administration clearly lay out the problem we face when they state that to meet water quality goals for the Chesapeake Bay, nitrogen and phosphorus pollution must be reduced by 44% and 27% respectively, despite expected population increases of 30% between 2000 and 2030. To meet this challenge, we must begin implementing more formal structures to control pollutant loadings. However, current law does not provide all the authorities necessary to establish, implement, and assess the results of such a new control measures. As such, I believe it is critical that we in the Congress step up and provide the legal authorities the EPA and the states need to take decisive action to restore the Chesapeake Bay. To that end, on October 20th, I introduced the Chesapeake Clean Water and Ecosystem Restoration Act of 2009, better known as H.R. 3852. This legislation is similar to legislation introduced, of course, by Senator Cardin. In the House, we have 16 bipartisan co-sponsors from throughout the Bay watershed and around the nation. I want to thank Doug Siglin, and I thank Ann Swanson, and I thank so many individuals here in the audience today for their tireless advocacy and support of this legislation and for the invaluable technical assistance they continue to provide us. Most recently, on December 15th, both Doug and Ann spoke at a roundtable we held on Capitol Hill to discuss H.R. 3852 with members from both sides of the aisle who represent the Chesapeake Bay watershed states. Their presentations were extremely important, and Doug will tell you it got a little heated in there because I think there were a lot of misunderstandings, and I think it was so important that Doug and Ann be a part of that because, again, I could see that because of their commitment, it may not have changed the minds of some people who are against this, but at least it gave them an understanding, a better understanding of what we're trying to do, but just as important of what we're not trying to do. Their presentations were extremely important in helping to explain the need for new approaches to the Bay restoration effort that are supported by this legislation. Let me give you a brief overview of the legislation. H.R. 3852 will require the Environmental Protection Agency to complete its determination of judicially ordered and scientifically derived maximum tolerable levels of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment in the Bay. The legislation would then require the Bay's watershed states and the District of Columbia to each contribute to the achievement of reductions in nutrient flows into the Bay until these levels are reached. Each jurisdiction would have the flexibility and discretion to develop its own detailed plan outlining how it would reduce its pollutant load. However, states that do not develop or implement their plans will face significant penalties. And one of the things that we constantly hear about and people are worried about are the penalties. And what we have said over and over again is that, you know, at some point you've got to have some type of enforcement. I mean, if you keep doing what you've been doing and expect a different result, that's insane. And so it's either, and keep in mind what I said a little bit earlier, we're talking about effectiveness and efficiency. And I really mean that. I mean, and I'm not just talking about, I'm not just talking about with this effort, I mean in everything we do. Some of you all may think that we have a life over there in that room that we're going to get to later on. This is it. We have one life to live. This is no dress rehearsal. This is it.